Hello and welcome to the City of Cedar Falls Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Wednesday, October 23, 2024. I call this meeting to order. Could I have a roll call vote, please, or roll call, please?
Alberhaski?
Here.
Grebevich?
Here.
Hartley?
Here.
Henderson?
Here.
Johnson?
Here.
Moser?
Here.
Sorensen?
Here.
Stolniker? Watkins?
Here.
One absent tonight.
All right, thank you. First agenda item tonight is approval of minutes from the last meeting. I'm looking for any conversation or a motion.
So moved.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, we'll move on to, this is a time of the meeting for public comment for anything that is not on the agenda tonight. If anyone would like to speak to anything, I take it there's no one. I will move on to our old business. We have two items tonight that I'm assuming will be presented together again.
Yes.
Two items tonight regarding the rezoning of a 2.6 acres located south of First Street and 350 feet east of Winding Ridge Estates, from changing it from A1 agriculture to RP planned residence. I believe Tom has this tonight.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to briefly go over just the location and what the requests are. The first is to rezone 2.6 acres located south of First Street and 350 feet east of Winding Ridge Estates from A1 agriculture to RP planned residence district. And then just looking at the, as far as what we look for rezoning, the future land use shows this area as medium density residential. The site is has access to public services, but right now subdivision would be required to extend water and sewer into the development. And this rezoning site currently does not have access to a public street, so a subdivision will be required to establish the right-of-way for Lake Ridge Drive to the south. And then the second part of this is an RP master plan amendment, and you'll see on here there's currently an RP master plan for part of the property along Winding Ridge Estates to the south, and then the master plan amendment is to change some of the layout from the previously approved plan and incorporate this new area into the master plan. And this is just a site showing some of the site features, and there is a wetland through the center of the property. It shows that they're proposing a buffer along the north side. It has the layout for the apartment complexes themselves. At the last meeting, there were several questions from the Planning and Zoning Commission and the public. They requested an opportunity to review the traffic study, which was included in your packet, and documentation related to the Army Corps of Engineers permit that allows for mitigation for the disturbed portions of the wetland. And at that time, the only thing we had available was just the permit from the Army Corps. In addition, there was questions regarding the new high school and if the traffic patterns from that was taken into account on this traffic study. And the question of were the wetlands deemed to be of lesser quality? Will the reduction in the wetlands impact the water quality and the flow of water from the upstream area? Will the large amount of impervious surface impact the water quality of the watershed? Can greater details be provided for landscaping within the buffer areas? And then can more details be on the change in the grade and the placement of the buildings along the Winding Ridge Estates be provided? And so if you have questions about previously, I have got my previous presentation loaded up, and we can go through some of the other material that we showed at the last meeting if you'd like to.
We just note that the applicant is here with their representatives, and they're here to answer a lot of those questions. They are the ones that have the information to answer those.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions for staff right now? Okay, is the petitioner here tonight and would like to speak to this item?
Good evening. My name is Dan Ahrens, 1501 Technology Parkway with VJ Engineering.
First, I'd just like to address a little bit of the elephant in the room. Wendell was here and presented this. He's been a part of this for more than 3 decades, and he did pass away a couple of days after the last meeting. And like I said, he spent a lot of time working on this project, and it meant a lot to him to get this thing right. As far as that goes, Paul Arch and I will be taking over this project. We've been working on it with him, providing the more technical aspects of it. We are both engineers, and we don't see any problem moving forward at the pace we were looking to move forward with this. That being said, I can start by addressing some of those issues that were just brought up, or if we'd like to see if there might be any public input, I can sum it all up at the end.
Okay. I was going to say, if you want to go, we can go to public comment first and then
Okay.
follow up. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, we're going to open this up to public comment, and there is a large group tonight, and I'm glad that you're all here to speak. Only thing I ask is that when you get up to speak, if you have multiple questions, just list them, and then we will try to answer those questions before the evening's over, either by the petitioner or the staff. And then also try not to repeat what your neighbors had said, just to try to keep it in a timely fashion. So if there's anyone who'd like to speak to this item, please come to the podium and give us your name and address, please.
Hello, my name is Chris Bronner. I live at 902 Juanita Avenue in Cedar Falls. I'm a homeowner just to the north of the proposed development, and I'm the president of Lakewood Hills Homeowners Association. We have 22 homeowners that have a community pond, and there's a lot of erosion and debris and sediment that comes into our pond from this property that's being proposed for development. Our concerns as homeowners is the potential damage from the increased runoff and uncontrolled erosion from the area. We'd like to understand more as to what's being done to prevent erosion that's already happening in the place. And would like to also impress upon the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting that this would be a great opportunity for us in future developments that are impacted with other watersheds. There's the Birdsell Creek watershed that also has a lot of uncontrolled sediment that travels through there, that we look and make proposals or put controls in place so that that erosion is controlled, similar to like what happened with Dry Run Creek, where there's riprap put in, potential sediment ponds. But I'd like to understand more on behalf of the 22 homeowners in my neighborhood, what is being done and what can be done by the developer to prevent damage to our property as they seek to profit from the endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Nagel, 328 Winding Ridge Road. I'm going to talk a little bit about traffic study if I can. That's I asked about that last meeting. A few points of concern regarding the traffic study. Data was taken during May 2020, full-on COVID. The people who prepared the report made an effort to correct for the data by comparing it to data that had been taken by the Iowa DOT at one particular intersection in July of 2017. School would have not been in session during either of those timeframes, but I still wonder if there's not concern for using that correction factor. Obviously, pandemic was unprecedented times, also you try to compare correct May data with data from July. You got summer vacations, you got a lot of things going on there, so that's just a general question. Observed data in May didn't include any pedestrian counts. I'm not sure whether they intentionally didn't count pedestrians or there were just no pedestrians because of COVID. There are definitely pedestrians, a lot of school-aged kids that would have traveled through all 4 of the intersections that they counted, especially during the morning peak hour if school had been in session. My son, for instance, travels through all 4 of them, and 0 pedestrians were counted. Obviously, I think one of the things of vital importance to all of us is safety. kids crossing that road, it's already a challenge. This isn't going to make it any better. So I'm just curious, were there really no pedestrians, or did we just not count them? Also, the data that was taken in 2020, and the subsequent analysis was based on a full build model for 2025 that included roads that are not currently planned. There were 2 roads that would have come off of the extended Lake Ridge Drive and kind of formed a 2-way intersection at Whitetail, where it kind of tucks in behind Walgreens. Those roads would obviously provide an extra avenue for traffic, not all the traffic not to have to go out on the highway. So that's also a concern. Again, I brought it up last meeting. I'm fairly certain traffic from the high school is not considered in the study. So just a lot of questions about the traffic study. Is it even, really applicable at this point, given a lot of the assumptions that were in the study in 2020 haven't come to fruition, and definitely the 2025 build out is none of it's done. So just a few things to look at there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to come up and speak? Name and address, please.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Corey Lorenz, and I'm an attorney, and I represent Jitesh and Sangeeta Shah, who live at 412 Winding Ridge Road. My office address is 726 West 4th Street in Waterloo. And because they are residents of Winding Ridge, my comments will be focused on primarily on the impact on Winding Ridge. I've read the packets from the last 2 meetings, this meeting and the previous meeting, as well as the video from the last meeting. My clients echo the concerns that have been raised in a lot of the emails and the communications that were made during that last meeting. I'm going to focus a little bit on the density issue and address that. I've worked with the city on many projects, both commercial and residential projects and developments. And one of the things that I'm always impressed with the city staff is that they do keep an eye towards the comprehensive plan and transitioning between one development to another development, making sure that it makes sense. Okay. And even to the point of being frustrated at times when I have clients that the comprehensive plan may not be what my client wants. There is a long-term comprehensive use plan here, and it calls for medium density development on the land that you guys are taking a look at today. And frankly, I don't think, at least in spirit, that the plans that are being proposed here today meet with medium density plan, development. I think there's some mathematical gymnastics that are being made to get down to that point to show that it's a medium density development. And there's a few things that specifically stand out to me. Number one, there's the additional land is needed to get to that number. Okay. The second thing is that it does not factor in the site plan. It does not factor in this land to the, on the north side that's not being developed, but will be developed eventually for commercial. Per the packet, per the information from VJ Engineering. Okay, that's 2.33 acres. So if you take that out of the equation, and you don't have to trust my words for it, it's right on the site plan up in the upper right, left-hand corner. If you take that out, then you're at 13.65 units per acre. Medium density requires 4 to 12 units per acre. Okay, so if you take that land out, and you're not factoring in the additional units that are going to come in for the commercial properties, you're over 12 units per acre. So you're outside of medium density. You're not meeting your comprehensive use plan under that scenario. But I take it even further with regard to the site plan. If you take the 5 buildings in the southwest corner here, there's 433 unit buildings, and there's a 21 unit building on about 7.25 acres. Okay, it's 153 units on roughly 7.25 acres. Okay. That's 21 units per acre right up against Winding Ridge. Right up against Winding Ridge. There's no transition here. There's no transition here, and this does not comply with the comprehensive plan. This is not medium density. If you want to even take it one step further, you take these 33-unit buildings in the very southwest corner that sit on about 3 acres. That's 99 units on 3 acres, literally in the backyard of 2 houses, sitting right on top of them with a 35-foot buffer. Okay, that's 33 units per acre. Well beyond what is acceptable for medium density. Well beyond that. So certainly the spirit of the comprehensive use plan of having a transition from an R1 single-family residential development, beautiful development, to 33 unit multifamily units right on top of these people's backyards, that certainly doesn't meet the spirit of what the long-term comprehensive use plan is calling for. My clients aren't going to sit here today and say there can never be any development. We understand at some point there's going to be a development, but I think there needs to be a little more long-range vision, and there needs to be a transition between the beautiful single-family R1 residential development and immediately into a very high-density multifamily development. I would ask that the commission vote no on both proposals, the zoning change as well as the amendment. I would ask that you vote no. At a minimum, I would ask that it be tabled and that new plans come forward that show more of a transition and do comply throughout the entire development, not just in certain sections of the development or having to use some bare land in order to meet the numbers to comply with the medium density plan. There's a 35-foot buffer, okay? Yeah, it meets the minimum requirements. That's a city street. It's a city street. We don't have any sort of detailed landscaping plan to see what the screening is going to be there, to see what these people are going to have. For example, one house in the corner there is going to have 99 units sitting in his backyard. Okay, what sort of screening is he going to have there? We don't have a detailed landscaping plan in this. We just have a comment that says vegetation screening and notes that say that'll get approved sometime down the road, all right? I think there needs to be more. I think there needs to be a larger buffer in this. There needs to be more of a transition. There needs to be a more detailed plan as far as what that screening is going to entail to give these homeowners some assurances that there is going to be a buffer there, okay, and there is going to be a transition there. Realistically, what I believe that the commission needs to do, what the city needs to do, is start over from scratch. Vote no, start over from scratch. Meet with the neighboring developments, put a plan together that transitions, maybe looks at twin homes, duplexes, townhomes with backyards, creates more of a buffer between the existing R1 single-family development and what a new development before you get into the very high-density multifamily developments. Again, it's not medium density. It isn't. If you look at that bottom, half to 2/3 of this development, which when I say bottom, I'm talking about the south half of this, right next to Winding Ridge, this is high development. This is high density development in that area. It's not factoring in the additional units that will go in on the commercial development, which will increase the density. It will increase the traffic flow. You also, the other point that I would raise is that there's not going to be a development where you're going to put this much hard surface on 7.25 acres right next to an R1 single family development where you're with wetlands and with a stream where you're not going to create some water issues. And I don't see anything in what has been presented that addresses any concerns as it relates to these water issues. What we have in a packet is effectively, we'll approve something down the road. That doesn't give these people the assurances right now that they're not going to have water in their backyards, in their basements, and so on and so forth. There need to be assurances now as to how much, the engineers can do those calculations, how much water flow, is this going to create additional water flow with all this hard surface on 7¼ acres that's going to increase the water flow into these people's backyards? And what assurances? We need more detention ponds. We need more assurances that they're not going to have additional water issues. The final point is, watching the video on the 9th, there was a comment about you guys just pass this along to the city council. I respectfully disagree with that. You guys are important decision makers tonight, very important decision makers tonight, because the first thing is you guys are the ones getting into the weeds in this and deciding whether this is the right plan or not, and whether it should be approved or not. And whether you approve it or not determines whether a majority or a supermajority is needed at the city council. So I think it is a very important decision, and it isn't just simply passing it on to the city council. And for all these reasons, I would ask that you vote no, or at a minimum table and ask for something for them to come back with a more feasible plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to come up and speak? Big group of people here tonight. Okay, thank you. Name and address, please.
Kamyar and Cheyenne, 1703 Washington Street. My concern is about wetlands. The city specifically has an ordinance that prevents development, that the developers should protect wetlands. And wetlands are places of incredible plant and other diversity of life forms, and it's the responsibility of landowner to protect them. That's just very basic. They're very rare. They're places of incredible productivity, source of food for all kinds of creatures. I noticed that in the past it was mentioned that this was a degraded wetland. Well, I'm an agricultural engineer. I can tell you that all wetlands in Iowa are degraded. It's such a misnomer that, well, this wetland is degraded, we should just pave over it. So it's just not the right thing. We have to protect wetlands. It's kind of like a medieval castle. And you say, well, we'll knock this down, we'll build another castle for you. Right? It doesn't make sense. It took lots of years to have those wetlands in those locations. They do incredible hydrologic work for the community. And that's why we have a stormwater utility. We pay, we could protect that, we can enhance it, we can restore it. The key kind of golden rule is for wetland is avoid doing anything to the wetland, minimize impact. That's number two. We got to exhaust those two. The developers need to show you that they've done everything to avoid building on these amazing biological diversity jewel in our community. And then they need to show, if they couldn't avoid, they need to show that they've minimized. And then the third option is to rehabilitate and restore. The city, with their stormwater fee, could work with the developer and show that we could do this. We have several examples of this in Cedar Falls where the city worked with the developer and they avoided the wetlands, and we're better for it. I can tell you several neighborhoods where this happened. Another important consideration for you is that either while I was on the city council or afterwards, this very development came before the council, probably before this body. And it had to get approval from the Army Corps of Engineers, and a lot of people wrote, and the Army Corps agreed that this was not a good place to develop the wetlands, that you should protect these wetlands. And that then the whole thing went away, and now it's coming back again. So last thing I would say is kind of related to previous comment mentioned. I think the choice of where buildings go is flexible, that we can change that. So it's very possible to have a good development in this site that protect the wetlands and actually adds value to this neighborhood. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? Otherwise, oh, another comment. Thank you. Name and address, please.
Atul Patel, 307 Winding Ridge Road. I have spoke before and had 2 weeks to think about a little bit more on this issue, and everybody has said we are almost repeating the same thing. But today, a lot of people has not talked about safety, security, and resulting from this development is a lot of traffic study has been talked about. A lot of how you can prevent people from trespassing. I mean, they're just literally in my like on my backyard. A pine tree, how can it stop somebody from crossing over on our backyard, or somebody's dogs or pets or the young kids? Right now, we keep our doors open, we keep our garages open. I mean, at the cul-de-sac, we have 10, 15 young kids just between 4, 5 houses are all playing with ease. And how can we replace our lifestyle with such a big development happening, right? Not even far away, right in our backyard. So those are the things that I don't have to do study about it. I just want you guys to kind of put yourself in our shoes and kind of think there is some moral obligation. I understand last time Vijay Engineering told on behalf of the developer that they have a land, they bought the land, they are the owners, they have the rights to do whatever they can depending on the zoning that was passed a while back. But in turn, a lot of things has changed since then, and my only humble request for all of us is this the right type of development? Like many has just said, there's other things that can happen, beautiful things can happen. Are we in an urban zone or a suburban? I mean, we have to know where we are. I mean, are we short of land in this town? I mean, do we have to really tear this piece of ground just to develop? And for me, what's the goal behind development as a city? Do we want to develop at any cost? Do we develop because of the property taxes? Do we want to develop it to bring people in? Do we, like, everybody has a reason, but for us, we really strongly feel between all the communities. I have talked to 3 neighborhoods, and ours is the most affected one. The Regis across is the affected one. Everybody has got the same thing, that what's going to happen next. Today, it might look good, but after 10 years, we don't even know who's going to be coming, going, who's going to be staying there. We don't even know. They're not going to tell us whether we can rent these people this apartment or not. I mean, we have no say in the matter. Neither you will have a say in the matter. And then we don't know what kind of people will be staying, what kind of a neighborhood is going to happen. And we have talked to a lot of people, a lot of neighborhoods that have done the same thing. Right now, it looks rosier. We may even give incentive to those people, developers, whatever, but the big thing is 10 years down the road, what is there to govern them? How can we make sure that they are keeping the neighborhood safe, or they're bringing the right people in, or we don't have any kind of crimes rising up, or traffic, or trespassing, or we are not a gated community. I'm not building a fence. A small pine tree is not going to give me that buffer zone. I mean, I today drove all around, and I kind of, it's such a nice fall. How can you tear this whole thing up, and then in the end, you replace with concrete and buildings, and then to do what? Do we need to force this development? I'm not against the development. Develop it, but can it be, is there another land that they can do the same thing? Why they have to do this same land? Is there something that we can barter the lands? I do not know. I'm just throwing it out. I'm not against the project, but if something has to happen there, it has to happen something different, more meaningful, more transitional, more something that fits, that gradually gets into the, because there is still 2 commercial tracts that we are not even talking about. There's something going to happen there, but hoping that that's not the apartment down, there's more of a commercial something else. But I just want to make sure that this is our line of defense. This is where we are making our most effort to be heard, and we do not know how much more it means once it passes further on, and what else can we do. And once it passes, then we do not have a control over. A lot of our questions will remain unanswered, not knowing the traffic. Who knows what's going to happen in 10 years? You know, who knows? There's so much questions are there that we don't have answers for. And in fact, I have my mother with me. She wants to speak a word, but I do not know. I can help her introduce, or she can, but she She wants to speak about security and safety herself because she walks that parking lot for 15 years and that whole area. Mom, you want to speak a couple of words? This is your chance. And she wanted to speak, so I said I will introduce you, basically. Your name.
My name is Manjula, and
address.
he's my son. I live in Winding Ridge, and I am concerned because there are many old people live there, lots of children are playing there, and are we safe or not? That is my concern. Because we old people all the time walking, kids are playing, so we are out. Is it safe? That is my concern.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right.
I'm Christina Mayman at 1107 Eagle Ridge Road. I was going to talk about the information that's in the packet and what Wendell said last time about the approved RP master plan that was approved in 1994. They keep talking about how since that was approved, this should be approved as well. And I'm just stating that in 1994, all of our neighborhoods did not exist. Things change over the years. I know that this is a decades-old thing that has happened over and over and over again, but the explanation that, well, this was approved, so this should be as well, I don't think applies because none of us even existed at that time. So I would also wish that you guys would vote no on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Please come to the podium, name and address.
My name is Fethiye Tüken, 218 Winding Ridge. And first of all, I want to emphasize that I totally agree all those emphasized issues and problems regarding environmental issues, social problems, and traffic congestions, and density issues that emphasized by the other people. And my point is that when we are developing a comprehensive city plan, and we just based on the land use and develop the city plan and make sure that some users can come together, some not like a low density and medium density and high density residential area, commercial cannot come to the residential area or industrial area, not the close to residential area, business districts. So in the land use, in the comprehensive city planning. And we developed that one, and then eventually, based on development and based on the faced issues and problems, every 5 years, 10 years, some revitalizations became necessary. Okay, it's that zone this, but based on the development, it needs to be revitalized. Rezoning is necessary. So based on those issues and demands. And so it is something that those changes based on the development process according to the comprehensive plan, because face-to-face is developed and requires some kind of the revitalizations and changes. In this area, in this projects, in this that we are talking is one of those issues. It's developed comprehensive plans, and based on the comprehensive plan, housing and everything is developed. But right now, all environmental issues, traffic congestion is kind of become the concerns all of the residents in here. According to those new developments that suggested is coming in that low density area. So it is our concerns that we are just requesting and suggesting reconsider revitalization, those zoning and comprehensive plan. And as myself, my city planner, and I know you are all coming to planning committee, city planner, and I am just requesting and then suggesting and asking as a whole community to consider those changes and rezoning based on the concern, residents' concern. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any more people from the public like to speak? Name and address, please.
Yeah, good evening. Xavier Falcon. I live in 302 Winding Ridge Road. I'd like to go back on the wetland topic. I was reading the city code on it says that to be deemed of lesser quality, I think that's a word that is used on the city code, there must be a mitigation approval through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which I think we've heard there was an environmental report. I'm not sure if the U.S. Army Corps has already approved that mitigation plan, so that's more a question. But it also says that it must be recommended by the city engineer. I don't know if it's you guys or somebody else, and approved by the city council. So my question is, has it been approved? Has this mitigation plan been approved by the city council? And the reason I'm asking is that if it's no, then it goes back to the first part of this section of the city council that say, no portion of a proposed subdivision or plat shall be established building lots in an area that are identified as wetland. So there'll be an immediate stop to that project. So again, it seems that the applicant is building this development plan I would say in the future, and say, well, we'll see what we're going to do. We're going to take care of that. But I would like to have an answer on those specific questions on specific point of the city code. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Brian Larson. I'm at 810 Lake Ridge Drive. And I know he brought up the DOT traffic. That is currently a 4-lane road, and then at Lake Ridge it narrows to 2, and we have a turn lane for Lake Ridge. The question being a turn lane to go south on Lake Ridge, or the turn lane is head-to-head traffic, so when you go into the middle lane, your kind of cars coming to the west almost head-on. So I think that's a lot goes on in that corner with people coming out of the ridges, people entering, and then if you're going to put 400 cars to the south. For the ridges, we're a community with a HOA. We support our swimming pool. It's a private pool. The concerns of safety, security is a concern of the Ridges neighborhood, and that's what I have.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak? Name and address, please.
Bharat Patel, 3109 North Ridge Circle. I was concerning that wetland. We are trying to improve the wetland. Everybody trying to go green, and why we are removing wetland? If removing wetland, it will going less green. And we are a dense area at that area. If you can see, there is too many population over there. And if we reduce the more wetland, like there is golden piece of the wetland over there. And if you reduce that, it will gain more and more environmental issue, more, like a very, very much problem for the different kind of animals. Like we see everyday deer over there. After this bill, we are not going to see that deer at all. I don't think so, because one palm tree, if you put one palm tree here, one here, doesn't make any effect on the wetland, And you can make more building, but you cannot make the wetland. It's to make the wetland, it's very hard, but we have already wetland over there, and we are planning to remove. Doesn't make sense. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Otherwise, I think I'll have the petitioner come back up.
I come back up?
Yes, you can come back up.
Sam Nagel, 328 Winding Ridge Road again. I've heard rumors, and I know it was addressed at the last meeting, but I don't think I saw any answers. But the question of is this income restricted, or what's the market rate? Is it market rate apartments? I know that question came up 2 weeks ago, and I don't believe I've seen an answer to it anywhere. So I just wanted to throw that back out there as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. come to the podium, please.
Other thing that also as a social issues, those developer is outsider, is gonna come after his or her rent and develop and then get his money, leave the community with a lot of issues, a lot of problems. We are here, citizens, care about our community, care about our city, and work on the issues and regarding the children, education, or some kind of traffic, whatever to consider all the social, economic, all the traffic problems. So we should give as a planner committee also consider this part of the issues to when we are rezoning. And like, what is the whole wellness of the community? Which way is going to benefit more the community? Outsider is coming, building, getting the money, living the community, or people are here, living here, always facing. We are developing those networks and living in here. So regarding when it comes to rezoning, when I am working as a planner, we consider those the issues too. Who is going to benefit? How is it going to turn into trickle down to our community? So what should we give the first priority? So regarding what they come to, because along those the comprehensive planning, rezoning, revitalizations every 5 years, 10 years, when it's become necessary based on according to development, based to the issues. And it was another issue that we always take into the considerations. So in the larger scale, how is going to benefit the community? Thank you.
Thank you. There's no other public comment. One more. Name and address, please.
My name is Cameron Lee. I live at 220 Winding Ridge Road. And just kind of dovetailing on some comments some questions I guess I had last time. And Dan and I have exchanged some emails post Wendell's passing. I had asked some specific questions around the ability to see some of the environmental and land studies. And I understand, due to the unfortunate events that they have not been able to produce those yet, or at least I haven't seen them. And then I know one kind of metric or statistic that was brought up in the last meeting was the existence of caffeine in the water. I believe the number was 381 parts per trillion. And I'm not a scientist and nor any sort of engineer, so I was curious, is that good or is that bad? So I went and did some research, and I think at the stat that I found that probably made it make more sense to me, and hopefully it's something that's helpful to you. 1 part is equivalent to 1 inch in 16 million miles. So that's not a large amount. And kind of back to how the wetlands began degrading, I think last time it was discussed at some length that there was a sewage leak at the Thunder Ridge Apartments, which is obviously just kind of to the southeast of that. So if that's what began the degradation of the wetlands, I don't know how that would be basically a reason why we could then turn around and destroy them. I would basically say that that's the reason why we should look to ways to fix them, as opposed to paving them over. So those are my comments and questions. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. So if there's no one else that would like to speak tonight, you have to come to the podium if you're going to talk.
Do I need to introduce myself
Yeah.
again? Yeah, Atul Patel, 307 Winding Ridge Road. I forgot to ask one question. A lot of discussion has been happening on density. Is there a clear-cut guidelines that you guys got to come up with a formula? You know what I'm saying? Like, can you put in 20 acres, 2 acres of all the development and then count 20 acres to come with the density? Or density is evenly distribution? Or is there any kind of rule, formula that we can go by? Because I don't see from what I'm seeing, density is here, there's nothing in here, but everything is counted. Nobody tells us that what's counted, what's not counted. It's just left up to us to do our own math. I hope that we are doing the right math. I don't know, you guys are doing your own math in your ways. Do you have a kind of, we would like to know, is there some kind of a clear-cut formula looking at this development especially as to how to come to a density figure?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I just didn't know there was a formula I can hear right now,
Oh,
so I
no.
can do my math. I don't want to.
City staff would be best.
Oh, okay. Because I would like to have that before we even progress any further, because this is a huge thing. So I like to have that answer if possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Name and address, please.
Christina Kapman, 1128 Lakeview Drive. I just have a question. As someone that has contributed to a brand new high school, and I just did some internet research today, which could very well be false. Our new high school capacity is 1,400 students, and we are already currently over 1,300. I also know that Hanson School just had to hire a 4th kindergarten teacher because their kindergarten classes were too big. So I would just like to know if anyone is taking into account our school system and whether we have room for 200 plus more families. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Sorry, okay, this one last one. So I have the same question for traffic study too. Is there is there a day or time or a year or weekdays, weekends, COVID, no COVID? Is there a particular time that a traffic study needs to be done that gives us a real figure that is more practically approached, you know what I'm saying, that you can go by, rather than whenever somebody does it and we do not know those figures are accurate or not accurate? Is there a guidelines for that too with the city? I mean, I can give you a report of traffic study, but if it doesn't have any guidelines, what's the meaning of the traffic report? So I would like to also have that some guidelines too, as to if cities accepting all these reports, the wetland reports, this report, that report. I don't want people to give whatever. I can, as a developer, I can manipulate those reports to have my own way as a developer. But now I'm not a developer, I'm on the other side, then I'm looking for that guidance, you know what I'm saying, so to protect the whole community and the development. So you have anything along that line requirement, or don't have that either?
That'll be a good question for staff, so we will get to that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, I think we're going to close public comment, ask the petitioner to come back up.
Well, that should be easy to answer. I started writing down all of the questions and points. I might need a little bit of help along the way to remember everything. I guess I'm not quite sure where to start, other than it was a good point that this was approved prior to all of those other developments being put in place. And if you were to purchase a piece of property based on the rules that were in place at that time, and then you save up to later develop that property, and then properties develop faster around you, and then come in and said, no, we want to dictate how you're going to build your property. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's meets city ordinances or Constitution. As far as the traffic study, the environmental study, all that, I think those are all included in the packet. And if they're not, I think they all got sent to the city. As far as what the guidelines are for those are done by professionals that do those types of studies, and their guidelines are clearly outlined in each of those studies. They're usually state or federally regulated, and they are outlined on there. As far as the wetlands, yes, a Corps permit was issued. I can tell you, as somebody that worked for the Corps for a long time, those are not easy permits to get, and they only grant those permits when a wetland is in very poor shape. The different reports called these wetlands very degraded, very disturbed, in different places and in different reports from different companies. And that's not our company that did that. As far as the caffeine goes, any caffeine is just the indicator of what, of that being a man-made water source. And study after study, because this has gone on for so long, has shown that as portions of that sewer were fixed, the wetlands didn't increase in quality. They shrunk. They went away. I'm not trying to say that no water passes through there naturally, but that was definitely a large contributor to that. As far as these wetlands being a Gothic castle that have been there for so long, the studies indicate, and so do the aerial photography, that as late as the 90s, this area was farmed, and that water used to flow further east and was diverted onto that property, heading towards the river. So these are emergent, these are man-made. This isn't something that has been there for eons, just to make that point clear. Also, mitigation is a huge thing that the Corps has been pushing. I've been to different seminars on it, and what that's doing is taking these degraded wetlands that are performing poorly, and in this case shrinking, possibly partly man-made, and we're taking those and putting those into a place where there's very good wetlands and using that money to develop large areas of great wetlands. We just worked with a company pretty locally here on the Dry Run Creek wetland bank. Now what you do is you purchase credits. The Corps and the DNR determine what those credits need to be for each type of wetland, and I think Wendell did outline that a little bit. So our client has an agreement to purchase those credits. We did go as far as we could to try to use as little of that wetland area, that degraded wetland area, as we can, because to be honest, those wetland credits are expensive, and nobody wants to bulldoze any wetlands, but in this case, and in the benefit cost of developing this area, which, like I said, has been planned for a long time, some of that, as little as we could, is being used for this development. I have more information on those wetlands, and there is records going back to 1937 of that area being cultivated.
Dan, can you answer a question? Is there a creek running through the property? I'm confused on that. With the Birdslope Creek I've heard of, and
It is a perennial stream, meaning only in very wet times. And that does bring up a good point that I want to get to. As far as the downstream neighborhood, was that Lake Hills? Anyway, I've heard it called the unnamed pond, but we did work with their contractor, VJ did, on them cleaning out the sediment in their basin a few years back, and I know that was an expensive endeavor, and it was not something that area wanted to have to pony up for, and we agree with that. Now, this development would have to meet city requirements for detention, so everything that was developed on that site has to be contained. And how detention works, without getting completely nerding out and going into engineering land, is we're going to contain all of that water on the site and release it at the rate of a 5-year storm, which is the statewide requirement. Now, what that does is it gives that water time to sit on site in these basins, and for that silt to filter out before that water leaves the site. And in many storms, the smaller storms, you don't get this gully erosion, which you can see in the reports from when they did the environmental studies. There's gullies. There's clear erosion, and that's flowing straight into that creek. And that creek, perennial stream, I should say, is not going to go away as part of this development. The state, the federal government requires that stay in place. Now, everything going to that creek has to be treated in detention basins. And that's shown on the plan. I should say that this plan is still a bit of a concept, and that was brought up a few times, but that's where we are in this process. I heard that we should, at one time, have this completely engineered, and the engineers should know this, and then I heard we should scrap the whole thing and redo it. That's an expensive endeavor to do over and over again for any developer, and that's just not how the process works. But back to that creek. and that perennial stream and how that water gets there. Now, there could be, and there will be, improvements to that. There'll have to be, because right now it's just a jumbled mess that hasn't been maintained. Now, when they go in to do any development in that area, they'll need to clean up around that, get rid of any noxious weeds, that kind of thing. Like I said, that perennial stream has to stay in place. That's required. But all of that mud that filters down into that from that whole acreage right now will be detained on site and released. As far as garbage or cars getting into that creek, we can't say where that's coming from, if that's coming from downstream or from further upstream or the immediate vicinity. I heard that in the last meeting. We don't know, but this development itself, like every development in Cedar Falls, will be required to detain its own water. I want to speak a little bit about density because that got brought up, obviously. I don't think you can parcel up and say, okay, because parking's required. This is getting looked at as a whole property. I don't think you can parcel that up. I was also almost a little bit offended by hearing, this is in my backyard. This is in my backyard. It isn't. This is meeting the code set up by the city, the zoning ordinance. I understand. I totally get it. My kids run around in my backyard too, and I totally understand it, but I also understand that if the property behind me that I don't own is developed later, then I don't get to control what they do if they're meeting all of the zoning ordinances. And if those zoning ordinances go out the window and we don't follow them, I'm not sure what our job is anymore as helping developers. What all am I missing, everyone?
Yeah,
and I don't have that in front of me right now. I did take at least 2 hours to prepare for all of this in the last week, but I do not have those in front of me. Karen, you might actually be more well-versed, or Tom, on how those calculations were done. I know that those have been run, and sorry, I'm trying to talk into the mic and look at you guys at the same time, but I know that those have been run, those density calculations have been run, and I believe they've been supplied to the city, but if not, we can sort that out.
Right, this is a planned development, so it's an RP zone.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of discretion on how this can be designed.
Yep.
So it's not like a typical R1, R2 that has, setbacks and, So a lot can happen in an RP zone. You can have single family, you can have duplexes, you can have multifamily. So that's why this is a discretionary process that goes through the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council to consider all these factors. Now, there's an overall density formula for the RP zone that's based on the R4 district, which is a higher density residential district. And that's the maximum, but that doesn't mean that the development is allowed or is guaranteed to get the maximum density. Mm-hmm. So what's been proposed meets the zoning requirements for RP, but that can be modified based on the conditions of the site and what's reasonable and how it goes through this process with the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. So there's a lot of discretion there on that.
Okay, and not to just start back and forth on this, but I'd like to know from everyone, say this section of ag that's parked there in the middle, 2 acres, 2.5 acres. Say that, and this is for my knowledge as well, because I'm sorry guys, I'm getting up to speed on this too, but if that was to not be rezoned to match what's around it, what would be the allowable usage of that land then? I mean, can you put livestock on it, or how would that go forward? I guess I don't know what that would look like.
Well, the A1 district, the ag district is basically a holding zone in the city when property is brought into the city, before services are available for it, it's zoned A1. Now, a lot of times the A1 areas are on the edge of the city, and as things develop out, then services become available there, sewer, water, streets. This is a remnant piece of A1. Obviously, it doesn't meet any of the A1 standards for a farm because you're required to have 20 acres, and so it's really not obviously appropriate for farming necessarily. But it's a remnant piece then, and as it's right in the middle here of the city, so there is ability to sewer it, to bring water there, and to bring streets into this area. So when those things are available, that's when you can talk about rezoning to the appropriate zone. So the request here is to rezone it to be, to the same zoning district and include it in this master planned development. Yep. That's what the applicant has requested.
Yep, exactly, and that's kind of the point I wanted to make, is right now, this is just the first step of it. I understand there's just a few questions going forward about the layout and stuff like that and the density, but at this point, I think we should focus on what we're actually trying to accomplish right now. What else am I forgetting? Anything?
Any commissioners have questions? Do we miss anything from the public?
There was a question about the intended user, like who the...
Oh, about...
Yeah. And the market rate.
And so forth. I know you're the builder and not the landlord, but can you address any of that?
I can. At this point, and I did talk to the developers about this, at this point, there's just so little known. I don't think the intent is for any sort of subsidized. I don't even know how that all works. But I don't think that any of that's been established here, because we're still talking about what that density would be, and that would affect what the buildings would be and what they would look like at this point. I understand the questioning, but I mean, some of the way that it's being brought about is a little bit concerning.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Have you looked at designing around the wetland as part? Obviously, that might mean a reduction in units, but has that been?
Yeah, and I don't know if we can bring up the layout, but it is as much as possible. It has to be crossed to gain access, but as much as possible.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, the orientation to the north, it's a little bit sideways here, just so you see the north arrow going north there, so we tried to fit it on the slide there.
The wetlands, is that what you're?
Yeah.
That is the current delineation, yeah.
The amount of parking is exactly what they need, so they cannot get rid of the gray parking around the purple, because it's exactly what they need, based on the minimum requirements, based on the units that they're proposing.
Thank you so much. That was one of the questions that got sent over to me last week, was, can we reduce the pavement? And yeah, we'd love to, but these are the parking ordinances, and
Not without reducing units.
What's that?
Not without reducing units.
You're exactly right.
Yep.
And also, there was a question about removing the fire lanes, and I don't think
Right.
the fire marshal would be on board with that. So.
And then, I don't know if the traffic study being done in 2020 during COVID, is it possible to redo when we have a little bit better idea of what that looks like now?
I believe so, but I mean, it comes down to, there's been multiple traffic studies and things are constantly changing, and yeah, with unlimited resources, we can do all these studies over and over again, but they're very expensive. So, I mean, if that's a requirement, I see where we could look into that. VJ did not do the parking, the traffic study. A company that is very well known for doing them did that traffic study, but I will say it's a very expensive prospect.
There was a question about turn lane going south. I know there's a turn lane going north now on First Street. Who looks at that? Is that looked at afterwards if there's more traffic, or is that part of a development like this? Or
I'm trying to picture it, and that's a DOT road.
So I think maybe I could provide some clarity on this. So when the land comes in for development and a plat is provided, a traffic study, an up-to-date traffic study, environmental report that includes the wetland delineations and all the technical aspects of the site need to be taken into account. And then you would determine, looking at the traffic that would be generated by this or other future things in the area, what a traffic engineer would determine what's needed at that intersection. You know, the turn lanes, you know, would take it all into account. So unfortunately, in this case, we're just at the master plan level, and all that information has not necessarily been reviewed by the city yet because we're not at the plating stage yet. And so I think there's a lot of questions here that if the applicant, you know, it seems like maybe needs to do some of that work, you know, to answer those questions. And maybe they have already done that, but it's really up for them to provide enough clarity, I guess, on some of these questions to make it comfortable for the commission and the council to approve the development. So it's not what triggers a lot of these things are the preliminary plat, and we have not received an application for that. But that doesn't mean that these questions are not valid at the moment.
Mm-hmm. And to that note, like I said, do you get the cart in front of the horse and put a lot of time and money into creating a plat that may just be asked to be completely redone? So
one of the things we ask the applicant to provide is a stormwater. We require that, a stormwater assessment, a stormwater report for our city engineer to review. But that's not a requirement at this stage. But what we said was, okay, when you get to the preliminary plat, if your preliminary calculations and what you're showing on your master plan does not meet the city requirements, you may have to come back to this stage and redo your plan. But we just ask if VJ was comfortable enough with the calculations you've done so far that you're comfortable with the detention areas that you've shown on the plan. And we're taking their word for that at this moment. And then when you get down the line, we'll be reviewing that in more detail. The city engineer will be.
Yep. And stormwater calculations have been performed, and many times, because the nature of stormwater calculations is that if we add 4 parking stalls, we have to rerun those calculations. So typically what we would do with any project is get ourselves in the ballpark, give ourselves some buffer room, finalize the project layout, finalize the calculations. So, and that's where we're at.
Am I correct that if they didn't want to add 2.6 acres to this piece of land that's already RP, that we wouldn't even be talking about this yet because it wouldn't even be this far along? That it's just only because we're only trying to figure out the 2.6 acres. Once that becomes RP, the development could still be designed with twin homes or single-family homes in some sort of community, or it could be any of that, correct?
Yes, but the application that has been submitted is for this particular layout. So that's what you're being asked to review, if this is okay with this particular layout.
Gotcha.
It could be any of those things that you mentioned, but that's not what's being proposed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commission have any more questions?
I do have a question regarding some of the comments that have been made to local school capacity. I know that we just built the high school, and it sounds like while we're not at capacity, that's certainly something we may approach. And then with regard to the elementary schools, when we're looking at development in this area, has city staff looked at the impact to our schools and if it can sustain additional students, or what the plan would be moving forward?
So the city does meet on a regular basis with the school district and let them know where there's potential development and new neighborhoods being built so that the school district can plan for adding the capacity where it's necessary to add the capacity. So that's, yes, we do collaborate with the school district across the city on where areas are growing.
So the school district currently knows about this plan, or they would find out about it later in the road to be able to speak to whether Hanson can handle the additional population?
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't think we don't limit we don't limit development and construction based on school capacity, do we? We build or we do construction and development, and then schools accommodate. Is that correct?
So I had a question. When these homes were built, was it known that this land could eventually be rezoned to RP?
It already was zoned RP.
Please, we can't have comments from the public like that. You're not at the mic. It can't be on the record if you're yelling from the crowd.
Well, where you wanted to go from A1 to RP?
Yes, everything but that couple acres is, staff said that was a remnant, is my understanding.
So I know this is in front of the commission, but today they could propose building on RP, whatever, design. They'd have to come to planning and zoning, but they could build on the current RP zoned land today without doing any rezoning.
So the challenge on that is that with the original 1994 RP plan, yes, they had a plan approved, and if there were not the wetlands and the stream corridor in here, they would have the rights to build what was approved, which was actually a few more units than what's being proposed today. However, because of the wetlands and so this is really about them trying to respond to the stream corridor and the wetlands and reorient some of these buildings and move things around to accommodate that. So I don't think that was clearly taken into account in 1994. So that's why we're back. They're back and asking for a change to the layout of their 1994 plan.
Thank you.
Any more questions from commission for staff or developer? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll bring it back to commission. Any more discussion on this? I've been informed that the notice for a public hearing was not published in the Courier, so we are going to move this meeting or this agenda to the next meeting to allow the Courier to have the public meeting notice. So I would.
Yeah.
Did you have more comment?
I was just going to say, I think it would be helpful to know, both for the applicants to know and for staff, if you have a feeling about what you would like to see. If you want any changes to this, what direction are you moving? Because it's helpful for everybody to know, kind of the direction that you're thinking, and if you want changes made.
Okay, I can answer that. I'm struggling with this development. I think development's always good. This has been zoned RP. It should be allowed to build, but I do struggle with having one of the lowest density neighborhoods and then trying to bring in this high density neighborhood right next to it. Struggling with that. But like I said, it is already zoned RP. We're just looking at rezoning a small section of that to add to it. So kind of where I'm at.
I know it's expensive, but I would really like to see maybe a rewrite of the plan that maybe has a little bit lower density and working around more of the wetlands so that we don't have to lose as much as we're currently proposing.
I would also agree. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you all for showing up. I know that there's a lot of people that have spoken about, especially families tonight. I know that there's kiddos running around outside, and this is time away from your family. And there are often times where we have things come across the desk and no one shows up, and then we hear about it afterwards. And so I just so appreciate everybody that has come out and spoken, and that takes a lot of courage. I would echo some of the comments. I know that this has been zoned RP for a very long time, but also the existing neighborhoods weren't there when it was initially zoned, and so a lot of change has happened in this city. I would agree. I would love to see maybe an updated plan that could show potential for lower density. I know that this will be developed at some point, and I agree, development is great. One thing that I'm really struggling with is the traffic study that was done in 2020 when we were at the height of COVID. I know that we did try to correct for some of that, but I think going backward to data that was taken in 2017 isn't necessarily reflective of the city that we have today. And I completely understand that it is expensive and timely to have to put together another traffic study, but I do think it would be worthwhile to see better data, especially given how traffic patterns may have changed with the new high school. I don't know if that has rerouted people, but given that the development as proposed would certainly bring in families, and that's wonderful to have more families in Cedar Falls, but families travel and they have to get around. And so I think it would be wonderful to see an updated traffic study. I don't know if anybody else would echo that sentiment, but I think it'd be great to have some updated data there.
So I agree that it would be helpful to see that, and I think the reality is those that this property was there zoned before these houses were built, and so it's unfortunate that folks are upset now that it's going to be developed, but that's just that maybe it's not going to be developed exactly how the developer wants it to be. It sounds like we have discretion around density and other mitigants to address some of the issues that have been raised by the neighbors. But when those houses were built, this was a potential that there was going to be building on this land, and I think that has to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, I would say too, maybe from engineering standpoint, there's been some talk about the 35 feet or 30 feet or whatever it is between the property and the neighbors to the west. Maybe more of a clear plan, or maybe a better plan for some sort of barrier there. If it is going to be built, then to see some better divide there might be a better option.
And I think we have discretion to look to that for this type of zoning. I would agree.
Anyone else?
I have two concerns with this project. One, it's not even about this project, but it's this recurring pattern of requests before us to increase density of different projects over the last several years. And while I understand some of the reasoning behind it, I think there are two big components that are missing from the picture that we're not really taking into consideration. And one is the quality of life. Are we talking about what neighborhoods are we talking about? Are we adding green spaces? Are we creating more parks? Or are we just increasing the density of housing in the area? And the second component, which I hope that we can consider in the future, is can we have a conversation about density bonusing when the developers come forward and ask to increase development, to increase density of the development? Can we have a conversation of the trade-offs there, and what can be done to improve that quality of life in the community in terms or through the vehicle of density bonusing? So that's the first concern. The second concern, I would have to respectfully disagree with the point of view that wetland credits can substitute or mitigate stormwater issues or any other issues that have been raised today. Respectfully, I have to disagree with that. My understanding is that those are large, consolidated areas where you have loss of biodiversity, and you limit the type of wetlands from multiple different wetlands to one, and it's really to support humans and human development rather than to provide any sort of environmental protection. And in fact, with the hurricanes in the southern part of the country, there's been so much talk about the role of wetlands, and you don't have to even go that far south. We've had floods in this area, and when storms come, your storm water credits or wetland credits are not going to mitigate. Just your wetlands will. That's my fundamental disagreement with that point of view. Thank you.
I think I just want to say that the sentiment about which zoning was done at which particular time, or so was there first, just because something was there 30 years ago. I mean, we wouldn't need a planning and zoning commission if we just stuck with what was planned initially. So I think it makes sense to have these conversations. That's why we're here, because things change, the world changes. So I think having this conversation and really diving into it shouldn't, that sentiment shouldn't be a reflection on what's true in 2024 versus 30 years ago.
All right, anyone else? All right, I would make a motion to move this to the November 6th meeting. Looking for a second.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, that'll move to November 6th. I do appreciate everyone coming out to speak tonight. It's very insightful for us on making our decision, so thank you very much. Have a great evening, and we still have another agenda item if you want to stick around. It's a good time. But yes, the November 6th meeting will be here with the Planning and Zoning Commission. Yes.
No, I mean, are you going to take the public into
Yes, we can. Yep, we can, yes.
So it's not going to be voting next meeting?
What's that?
Will be voting for you next meeting, or it's still meeting?
No, it should, we could make a decision on next meeting, yes. Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Appreciate you guys listening to us. Thank you.
All right, we do have some new business tonight as we clear out of here. We're still in a meeting, please, if you could keep it quiet. All right. All right, so we move on to new business. We have a petition to renew College Hill Self-Supporting Municipal Improvement District. And we have Tom tonight.
I'll talk about
Or
that.
Karen, thank
Yep.
you.
The College Hill Partnership has submitted a petition to the City of Cedar Falls for the renewal of their College Hill Self-Supported Municipal Improvement District, or SMID. This has been in place for some time, and about every 5 years, in fact, exactly every 5 years, they have to renew this and check with the property owners that are within this area, because basically what it does is this is an agreement for the property owners in this area to tax themselves to support this business district. And so they have to collect signatures from a minimum of 25% of the unique property owners that represent 25% of the total valuation of that defined area. The College Hill Partnership did submit signatures. They have over 45% of the unique property owners, representing over 45% of the total valuation within that area, so they've met the state requirements to renew the SMID. So basically, this is to discuss the Planning and Zoning Commission's role is basically to review this and then to send a letter of recommendation to the City Council stating whether you support the renewal of this SMID district. So that's what's on the agenda tonight.
Okay, thank you. And you said, what, 40%?
They had over 45%.
45% is a pretty high number for taxing yourself, so it sounds like it's a pretty good support. Any other comments on this?
How many times has this been renewed?
I have been around for one renewal. This is the second renewal that I've been here for, and I know that it was around probably at least 5 years before that. So this is, maybe the third or fourth time.
I just have the question on the clarification. In the packet, it discussed unique tenants. And does that mean, and I was looking at the signatures, does that mean separate properties, not necessarily separate owners? Is that fair to say? If you own multiple buildings, you would be...
So it has to be at least 25% of the unique property owners within the district. So 25% of the property owners, and those 25% have to own enough property to basically create at least 25% of the valuation in that district. So you can't just have, 25% of
But if
the
one
small property
person
owners and
owns
then all the big property
90%.
owners are, yeah.
Yeah.
So they have to meet both of those
Got it,
thresholds for
got it.
this.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, this is a powerful funding source for, community Main Street downtown here. And I mean, the College Hill is very wise to pursue this, so.
Agreed. So we're just looking for a motion and.
Yeah, we got motion to recommend approval.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Does this require a roll call vote or?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me get the roll call here. Alberhaski.
Aye.
Grubevich.
Aye.
Hartley.
Aye.
Henderson.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Sorensen.
Aye.
Watkins.
Aye.
That motion carries.
All right, thank you. Is there any commission updates for tonight?
I don't have anything for you tonight.
Except that our meetings do switch to what, first and third
Right,
weeks for November and December?
right,
Okay.
right. Now, I would want to say, we will check because there was so much discussion tonight on the previous items. We will check with the applicants and their engineers because there's a lot of things that you've asked for and the public has asked for, whether that's enough time for them to get that all pulled together. So we will let you know then if they want to postpone that further, and we'll just let you know that. But
Okay.
otherwise, it'll be on the November 6th meeting.
Okay, thank you. I would entertain a motion to dismiss.
So moved.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, meeting is adjourned. Everyone have a great evening.